they could be, listen, they could be ISIS. I don't know. Did you ever see a migration like that? And I'll tell you right now, and I'm putting everybody on notice, and hopefully this gets outside of this room, and I guess it will with all these crazy cameras going back there. I'm putting the people on notice that are coming here from Syria as part of this mass migration, that if I win, they're going back. They're going back. I'm telling you. They're going back.
At no other time in history has there been a greater need for an open-hearted dialogue with crises enveloping nations and a trail of despair and deceit. Though it would seem apparent as human beings, we have an innate understanding of what is truly right and wrong. In order to fathom what is going on right now, we must look into the case of Europe. Europe finds itself in a turmoil of divergent political ideologies and humanitarian concerns. What is our response to a humanitarian crisis? And what about people fleeing persecution? And what about economic migrants? And lest we forget, what about after Germany opened her borders and in Cologne there were cases of multiple rapes?
To let in or not to let in, that is the question. With the Arab Spring of 2011, instead of a fresh spirit rising, there followed the harshest of winters. The domino collapse of first Tunisia led to the uprising in Libya and Egypt, and overthrow of Gaddafi and Mubarak. The power vacuum created led to a huge upwelling of anger and frustration, and the birth of disparate militias vying for power. Such a crisis spawned the surge in fundamental Islam, the creation of ISIS, and fresh wave of terror. Europe was already perceived to be the land of milk and honey, with a wide embrace to greet those who literally took the plunge. By 2015, up to 1.3 million asylum seekers arrived to start a new life, over 11% of the total in the last 30 years. In this groundbreaking documentary, in order to investigate these concerns and many others, we travelled to Europe and met the people from all walks of life who are deeply involved. Immigration Chapter 1, Politics. We met with David Larsson in the County Hall, a representative from the Swedish Democrats, a political party that represents such nationalistic tendencies. They were only formed in 1988 and are now one of the most populous parties with nearly 18% of the vote in 2018. Many commentators state they were founded on certain Nazi ideologies. In the early days, many of their party members would even wear Nazi outfits to party functions, and today they promote a zero tolerance to immigration.
I still think we don't really have a constructive and a discussion that moves anywhere when it comes to migration.
But what is the standpoint of your party about migration? What is the policy? Is there a strict line on what they say?
We have a strict line that says, stop, it's enough now.
But on what basis though? Because there's not enough resources, or because the people are becoming more difficult?
If you look at the 1980s, there was a war between Iran and Iraq.
Yes.
And there were refugees from both countries coming at the same time. And we thought, oh, those poor people, they just want a safe haven, and we put them on the same place. And they began to fight, and it didn't turn out great.
So they were all put in one area together?
They were put in an asylum center,
yeah,
side by side, room by room, and they didn't go along. And of course, your family killed my family, you bastard.
But then surely that's asking for trouble, putting people who have had trouble historically on top of each other.
We thought those are not the angry people, those are the nice people.
In Sweden, we do have crimes, we do have criminality. I mean, that's a part of society. That's nothing new, no matter if people come in from other countries or not.
The extreme racist backlash against minorities has fueled the increase in people becoming asylum sympathisers. We met with Martha Wickland, who represents the left-wing party, on the opposite face of the coin.
Okay, well anyway, why did Sweden as a
and Germany,
so many
yeah,
Germany? Why did
yeah.
those nations more than others?
Because we saw that there was an actual need to let people flee from the war. Yeah. We accepted people because we are humans, yeah. and we saw people in need.
You have also the question of how many immigrants can Sweden take? And at a certain time they said it doesn't matter how many. And I thought, what? You have to calculate with what will this cost, what will this mean if you double the population of Sweden. We're a small country.
Yeah.
If, say, you have 30 million people come over.
Yes.
And it's a very famous quote. We have a very liberal female in politics in the government called Annie Lööf. And she said, yes, 40 million immigrants, no problem. And I thought, okay, if they come here now, it's crisis. It's cold here. People will freeze to death.
But obviously, as long as people have got the necessary shelter, the access to employment and education, should it really matter about the number? Shouldn't it be more about these people are coming from war-torn nations? They're coming from places where they have no home anymore, perhaps. Maybe all their family members are dead. What do we say to these people if they need asylum?
I was thinking a lot of this, and no one is talking about money. And money is at the core of what politics is about.
Many people argue that Europe is actually rich enough to take in a limitless number of immigrants. Sweden is also the largest country in Northern Europe, with a population of only around 9 million people. More than half the nation is covered in forest, and Sweden is 85% larger than the United Kingdom, which has a population of more than 64 million people. London alone has a population more than that of Sweden. So in terms of land and population, there is plenty of space for people. And financially, Swedes are the fourth richest nation in Europe. So if the problem isn't money or land, the problem must be something else. And it seems to be the parties, like the Swedish Democrats, who feel that immigrants are ungrateful for their generosity, of allowing them into their neighbourhoods, and by repaying the Swedes with crime and a lack of integration.
Thomas Guri, he came from, I think it was Turkey, and he made Swedish friends, he got to work, he learned the language, he dressed like Swedes, walks like Swedes, talks like Swedes.
Do I have to blend in and be like you to be accepted?
Well, in Sweden, everyone, it's in the culture. Everyone should be. It's a bit primitive.
David is convinced that the only way for foreigners to stay is if they trade their original identity for that of a Swedish one. He even admits his outlook could be viewed as primitive. Immigration Chapter 2: Media and Propaganda.
The students here are Muslim migrants seeking asylum in Norway. They're being taught how to respect women.
ولا رجل شرقي راح يتغير من درس نرويجي قاعد يسمع بيوم الخميس. مثلا أنا يجي شخص عربي يحكي معي يقول لي إنه أنت ليش لابسة هذا اللبس؟ لبسك غلط. أنت لابسة غلط. يقدر يروح هو يكلم يكلم النرويجية يقولها إنه لباسك غلط ونعم تلبسين غلط. هذا راح يتغير. يعني الناس تيجي بس تاخذ إقامة تقول للدرس باي باي مع السلامة.
Anti-immigration and Islamophobia is being pumped into the bloodstream of Europeans like a shot of adrenaline. Trump is keen to jump on the bandwagon of any scenario where he can raise the red card to migrants.
You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden! Who would believe this? Sweden! They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
The problem, there was no incident in Sweden.
Equally disturbing is the evidence of Russian TV crews who tried to bribe youths to make trouble to give immigrants a bad reputation. It seems there is a global effort to spread fear and divide communities over supposed differences in race, religion and creed. And other parties in nations such as Britain have exploited the Swedish tensions to stir up racial hatred and boost votes, such as with Nigel Farage of the Brexit Party, with strong nationalistic undertones. The Swedish Democrats are behind two of the media outlets with scaremongering headlines. Disturbing headlines include some of the following: immigration behind shortage of drinking water in northern Stockholm. Refugee miner raped host family's daughter. Thought it was legal. Performed female genital mutilation on her children. Given asylum in Sweden. When you hear the stories behind the headlines, the truth is often very different to the picture being painted. How is such reporting going to bring harmony to the communities? My camera team and I visited Vivala, Örebro, one of those so-called no-go zones, even regarded as especially vulnerable, with an open drug trade, and found a very different picture to what had been painted in the media.
1960, whole Sweden, they built a thing called million programs, where it's like Rinkeby, Vivala, Rosengård, Hammarkullen, all these places is in this million program that the politicians...
Like a ghetto?
Yes.
But why?
Because they said Sweden needs more houses for people that don't have so much money. But that time, 1960, it was for the Swedish people that don't have so much money. Those people moved to these places like Vivala, like Rinkeby. But in the 80s, 90s, when the immigrants came to Sweden, they was moved out to these places.
So it was almost forced by government players?
Here in Örebro, if you're a Somali person and come to Sweden, and the first place you come to Örebro, 85% you will get to Vivala.
Here we met with Khalid Mohammed, who despite having a tough upbringing has developed a positive determination to help others. Locals now call him the mayor, showing the people trust in him. Let us see if Vivala is fairly represented in the media, and does his community have equal opportunities. We asked if his project for the people had been able to turn people's lives around.
So see it.
So you believe if the right structure's in place, you can cope with more people? There is no critical mass?
No.
Because a lot of people I speak to, they say critical mass.
No.
You don't believe in that?
No. You can
Why not?
bring how much money you, how many people you want, because if you bring people, the country will earn more money on that, because it will grow more work, it will be more houses, it will be much more stuff. This country will be bigger. Now we have forest, more than half of the country.
Khalid reminds us how Sweden exported over 11.4 billion worth of arms in the early 2000s, and per capita sells some of the most worldwide. And who is paying all the taxes? He shows how the media war and segregation policy have divided people and led to people being treated differently. Surely this is in contradiction to the UN Charter, that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights.
And when I was raised, we had much anger through the system and through the police and everything.
How do you release that?
We started an organization when I came back from university called For the People, FTP.
The beating heart of Vivala today here.
Yes.
And where would Vivala be without this community centre now, do you think?
Oof. Without this community centre, we had when we started this, we had big problems with broken windows and at apartments, at the schools, at the center, and much stuff like that. It will still be like that. Before it was much painting at walls and everything.
You mean graffiti? In the neighbourhood and everything?
Neighborhood,
so all this is stopped now?
Yes, it's not as much as it was before. Many more businesses have started since we started our thing. We have inspired people that it's not so hard to start a thing.
We clearly see how one man with a selfless attitude is able to make such a difference. Why can't the government institutions do so either? One shocking point was how Khalid revealed when his community built minarets for prayer, they were told in no uncertain terms by officials not to announce the call to prayer. Church bells, on the other hand, ring out daily in the suburbs throughout Sweden. Does this not seem to be a case of hypocrisy, when Sweden opens the doors to migrants, knowing fully well their belief system, and then introduce laws to stop them practicing? Is it any wonder immigrants feel disempowered and their voice not heard? Immigration Chapter 3, The Minority Report. It seems many felt the welfare system that they had come to rely upon was now showing cracks, and they were blaming the migrants. It seems another issue faced by second-generation immigrants is the identity crisis that strikes into the heart of them. Many of the people we met simply did not feel they were adapted to life in Sweden, and at the same time, neither feel any sense of belonging to their parents' homeland.
Most of the people here was forced.
And do you think it was easier to build your lives here back then, and it's harder now?
Well, I think it was a bit easier back then, definitely. Because,
Why?
For example, to integrate in a society, you need meeting places between the different communities. We're seeing xenophobia and racism is rising. And I think that people need to know about Sweden is the segregation. It was part of it is social engineering. If you look at the construct of neighborhoods in Sweden,
Interesting.
you will find like here we have a center where we can buy food. You can go to get health care, dental care, and everything. And
so you don't need to integrate or to meet different types of people.
Exactly.
So you become isolated.
You can't isolate.
Identity.
It's identity crisis because when we go back to our parents' home countries, they see us as Swedish people.
You're a foreigner in the land of your parents' origin, and you're almost you're an alien.
An alien here as well.
So how does that feel? Where do you feel you belong? If you're honest.
Nowhere.
We met Ilyas from Morocco, and he is the embodiment of such an individual, feeling confused and lonely in equal measure. And how has your experience been of being in Sweden?
Yeah, I have experienced many things. So
Has it been negative and positive?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Can you tell us like the most positive thing about being in Sweden?
Right now, for the moment, I don't have anything positive to say. I wish that I could leave Sweden now, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Can you share that with us?
No, not exactly. It's a long story. It's a long story. It's long and sad story. So, yeah.
Can you share just a little bit for the sake of the people to understand what the problems are here?
So that it's justice, everyone is equal, but I haven't feeling like this the last, the last 6 years here. I feel that Sweden is not the way that people describe it. So, yeah, that's my opinion.
I guess for this lady, Europe was not the land of milk and honey. Another remarkable individual we met was Andre, who looked very Swedish to me.
Well, if you mean me being Sami, I've been unemployed for 2.5 years.
Why? Have you got skills?
Well, minor skills, but not really big ones.
But why aren't you able to get the... Do you feel the government's not helping you find opportunities?
Not in the slightest. But hey, the government usually screws over my people all the time, so I'm not used to it.
Yet he actually represents the Sami community from northern Sweden, a reindeer herding community who were traditionally nomadic. He feels he is discriminated against in his lands by the Swedes, and he's actually struggling to find work despite a willingness. He also feels many people who join gangs do so because of poverty and disillusion.
The biggest problem in these areas that are affected more by crime is poverty. People being able to survive, to have an employment, all of this. That's the big issue. And one of the reasons that this has come up is that the government for the last 10-15 years have put so much more effort into making things good for the people that already have wealth, that already have riches. You fund people having nannies or a gardener. We pay
through taxes.
Yeah, through taxes. Our taxes go to things like that, to substitute things like that, instead of putting that money into the education system, where we can help and prevent things like this from the start. We've always had violence, domestic violence. We've always had problems with alcohol and with other sorts of crimes.
And how was your first experience of meeting outsiders? Can you remember?
First time they were not very nice to us. I remember the first experience. Okay, yeah, we got in a fight actually with them because they were not like us.
So how did it happen? Did they come to you or did you go to them?
I think we both. What can you say?
Came together?
We threw some words at them and they threw some words at us and stuff like that.
So why did you feel as a group that you had to attack them?
I think it was because of my friends.
Yeah.
They were really aggressive people, and I wanted to be like them.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I moved that way.
Do you think they had been influenced by their parents or by the media? Why did they feel this animosity or this hatred or fear to these outsiders?
I think it was media and stuff like that.
So despite seeing in 2015 many immigrants coming in, many of them going into small like ghetto areas, do you think a lot of them would have been happy or are happy to integrate into different areas? It's just that they were pushed like that by the government or by the situation?
Yeah, they were pushed into that ghetto life and stuff, and not socially accepted with the Swedish culture.
Is that positive?
No, it's negative.
Yeah, my name is Christian.
And I was involved with first National Social Front, and then I was one of the main persons in Blood and Under Skåne. Because I was angry, upset, and I wanted to blame someone in our society because I was having a bad time. The loss of my mother, and that no one cared of how my feeling was. Because no one else were there. No one else cared. Unfortunately, it was the Nazi people who was first on place. I had this situation when I was attacking a group of left-wing activists. Me and my comrades was going to this place where we always sit and having a good time, drinking, listen to white power music, and unfortunately this group was there before us. They noticed us and they recognized us. They tried to flee in the forest, and one of the guys I left, I hunted him down, and I kicked his foot with my shoes. They have this metal toe. And it hit so bad that I can actually hear and feel the bone crash. He fell on the ground and tried to protect the damage. And I was lying on the side, and here I made a really bad decision because I aimed and jumped up and landed on his side. Something broke in his... That's the worst thing. He's in a wheelchair now.
Christian was extremely emotional as he reflected how far he had been willing to go to feel part of something and gain esteem. Admitting his mistakes has now given him the strength to transform his life, and he now works with children with challenging behaviour to do likewise. Loneliness, anger, and the desire to be accepted by a group is what drove these men to be part of something extreme. It seems you don't even need to believe in the Nazi ideology to be convinced, as the sense of belonging overpowers this tendency completely. This idea does not escape the recruiters, who prey on a generation of youths with no sense of identity and belonging. Initially they offer you a shoulder to cry on, but soon after this the pattern changes. Surely the same scenario plays out every day amongst the ghettos of Europe, where the tactics are used by the likes of ISIS to destroy promising young lives. We met Murad, who has parents from Armenia and came to Europe, he says, to escape conflict during Iraq's Saddam Hussein regime in the 80s.
If you're coming from a nation such as Syria, as Afghanistan, and there's war, but you get to Turkey and you find the security and they're practicing the same religious customs, so there's no culture shock, why not stay there? Why push on to Sweden or Germany?
Yeah, if these countries, they can have they give rights to these people, of course, why not?
But historically they did, didn't they?
Who?
Before Erdogan, they gave those rights to people.
Yeah, for not, yeah, I spoke about the Turkey when they give many refugees. They was there, of course, and still now. So I don't say that they don't do that, but in which situation they live.
But isn't it a danger that we're seeing a lot of people migrating then more for opportunity and economic reasons than purely asylum, and then it creates a problem?
But you know,
for the real asylum seekers,
yeah,
is that not possible?
The problem when the war starting, you like Sweden, we sell weapon to these countries and they make war, and when they came to our country and they say stop. Sweden, it is like I say, it is a very big country, a rich country. We need these people.
Now, does Murad actually answer our question? We accept, of course, Middle Eastern migrants are unlikely to go to Jordan or Egypt, primarily because the governments claim they do not have the resources to support them. We also see, in such cases, many will end up in long-term refugee camps, and there are at least 5 in Jordan alone. Yet at this point, he seems to avoid considering that perhaps many migrants are mainly seeking economic and social freedom, and a place to release their inhibitions after much repression.
Syria.
I'm from Syria.
Syria. Afghanistan. Afghanistan.
Syria.
اندج زسني سيستم
مفيش اي حاجه مفيش
ايام ليفد ان ستريت صلاة رياضية قلت لهم بتنفل دم عيش كده عيش زليل يا جدعان طب روحوني ادوني تذكرة واروح
my bed. It's been almost, I think, 7 months that I'm sleeping here, but I wasn't expecting that I have to face this kind of situation. We are being pushed into psychological disorder. I would like to tell the government of Germany that they must stop the border area because they don't have enough housing facility to settle more refugees.
We came together. We've been in this one part of this society. When we came, we go to disco together. We have many activities together.
Meaning people from different backgrounds.
From different backgrounds, from Iraq, from Lebanon, from Iran, some from these countries.
So they
are
come
friends.
to the clubs together in the bars.
So of course,
socializing.
Yeah, socializing. Like people like youth here. After a few years, few of them, it was they was more fundamental. They
radicalized.
Radicalized. So the problem, and we must analyze why it is happen. For some people, they be radical. So
they came from Lebanon and Syria, so they wanted to enjoy freedom, perhaps, did they? Do you think?
Of course, they escaped from the war when they came. But few of them go take another side to be radical. Why? So, I mean, it is very important when we spoke about integration system from the beginning to have, born in other country, I must be one of this society. And how we can do that, like politician, like system. So we must change this, our
maybe
system.
half the problem was they came here looking for integration and freedom, but when they found that if they went to a party or socialized, the other people, maybe they rejected them, maybe they didn't feel they were able to adjust, and then they became radicalized. Maybe that was a problem. They felt rejected. Maybe?
Maybe.
Did you
maybe
see that
one,
happen?
Maybe,
Did you ever see that happen?
Of course, maybe one of these reasons, of course, when you have discrimination about the job,
Let's
about
be
this.
honest.
Maybe
you meet in the bar and you think the person likes you, and then they don't want to get to know you because you're not of their background. You're not Aryan or something.
Yeah, of course, we have
that
this.
happen?
It's happened.
It begs the question, why do many of the immigrants feel the need to continue the journey west once they reach the European borders? It seems many have set their sights firmly on the likes of Norway and Sweden. And yet at the same time, can we question if the people have a fundamental right to choose where they go? Do European citizens have the right to oppose them? There is the fundamental law of karma, and for every action, there is an equal reaction. who can deny a degree of accountability when 1/3 of the weapons and ammunition used by ISIS to maim and kill Syrians, Iraqis and Afghanis and displace millions were sourced from weapons factories in EU states such as Germany, Sweden and Romania? Migrants bypass mega-rich Gulf states such as the UAE and Kuwait, which have very strict immigration laws with point scoring. These states work with agents in the Far East and Africa to import cheap temporary labour. They restrict and prioritise lucrative visas to high-level tech workers who provide IT and business management solutions. They regard it as prestigious to employ Europeans such as Brits, and there are many incidents of competent Arab workers being dismissed to provide an opening for them. Here it is all about the short-term benefit and lining the pockets of the Emirati, and if you don't fit this bracket, you are not needed. In these states, do you really think there is any space for potentially vulnerable migrants who require welfare and educational support? And there is no doubt that most EU nations have a long history of welcoming immigrants into their territories without judgment and granting a platform for them to prosper and give them so much freedom. Unlike the Gulf states. Immigration chapter 4. What do the scriptures say? We reviewed some of the scriptures and found some clear narrations about how to treat foreigners. We spoke to a pastor who said that the mission statement was to love all and therefore accept all. You must treat the foreigner living among you as native born and love him as yourself, for you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Did Prophet Muhammad not migrate to a new city once he and his followers had faced verbal and physical abuse? In their era, these prophets taught us we were also strangers at some time, so we should try to be empathic to outsiders, and for those with the ability should offer refuge to good-hearted migrants and treat them as you would wish to be treated yourself. Yet, on the other hand, in the Old Testament, the messengers of the same one true God, such as Joshua and Solomon, would visit foreign lands and wipe out nations that were in defiance of God's law. It seems clear that messengers adopted a different strategy to deal with the affairs of their time. The Islamic Republic of Iran and Catholic papacy supposedly unite religious and political thought. Yet then why are such communities divided by corruption and disputes? Therefore, we are clearly not going to be able to resolve the migration crisis through analysis of the world's scriptures. Immigration chapter 5. The social experiment. Would you take in a refugee into your home? At every step of the way on our journey, we challenge people's own perception of what they claim to believe, to see if it resonated with the mission statement.
I'm honest, and I will say no.
But why?
Because I want to live in my own apartment with myself and those who I choose to live with.
I think I would be skeptical at first, but then I would have given them terms that saying that you have, okay, if you're gonna come in, you have to help me with this. You can.
But what if they've got their own rituals or their own practices? Would you let them come in and do those rituals and wearing different cultural clothes?
Yeah, they could wear almost whatever they want as long as they accept my terms.
We met with Jerome from Burundi, who works with Khalid at For the People. The crew and I were shocked by his response.
Om det kom en person utanför och snälla släpp in mig i din stad, skulle du släppa in personen?
Nej.
Nej. Varför?
Why? Om det inte på grund av liksom som flyt på grund av krig eller något sjukdom, Så man skulle inte komma hit.
He said, yes, he understands the Swedes because and why they are angry because many. He's been working 7 years by himself, working with immigrants and teaching them Swedish. And he says it's much problem with the politicians and the immigrants that come here.
He knows some migrants have come with different agendas and therefore feels Sweden should actually lock down.
You feel about that, and they want to wear slightly different clothing, maybe they want to wear a hijab, or how would you feel about that?
It wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, and
it's
then
clothing.
And they want to invite their own family to come and live in the city and the community.
Yeah.
And perhaps even live in your house if there's space. Would that be okay?
Yeah. It's normally the ones that have the least that always give away what they have. They always share what they have.
Because Sweden's
And
wealthy.
Yeah, we're absolutely,
So
and that's
does that
what I mean.
The Swedish or you would be prepared to do that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because it's easy to say yes, but what about if you, as my partner says, have not got any food then to feed yourself, but you have to give it to that person?
No problem. No problem. If I could help, then I would. I say that in order for you to feel welcome in a country, you need to be able to also enjoy who you are and not be ashamed of who you are.
So perhaps this matter is really bigger than we thought. Immigration Chapter 6, The Border Games Conclusion. In Europe today, by approaching politicians, activists, locals and minorities, religious figures, we get a full picture of all the different ideological stances on migration. Those who claim to want to keep the doors open at all costs. Those who want to block and even send back the migrants. We also met immigrants that feel like outcasts and seem to have lost all hope, and others who have become pioneers, starting businesses and associations to support communities. Many were drawn to Europe by the promise of welfare and freedom from oppression. After the fallout from the Middle East conflicts, Europe had been very generous in its open door policy, in direct contrast to the mega-rich Emirati states. In fact, the 5 most wealthy Arab states take in no refugees. If we reflect on this, the Arab world claims they are all one brotherhood of faith, yet when a crisis hits their neighbours, they literally turn a blind eye. At the same time, they are bold enough to call the Europeans disbelievers, even though they opened their floodgates to the refugees in the wake of the Middle East crisis. Most human beings want the best for their families, so as long as there is conflict, wealth and social disparity, the determination to migrate will always prevail, and so too the dilemma. With such people displaced by war, wouldn't you want to help them? Yet the fear remains, if a Salafi group comes in and tries to impose Sharia law, what right do they have to do so?
Jordan Horner was part of a vigilante group called the Muslim Patrol.
It's a Muslim area. Right. Obviously no alcohol is allowed in this area. Obviously, cannot dress like that in Muslim area.
That's when it become more of going out and stopping people drinking and stopping people holding hands and being outside the mosque dressed in certain ways. That's when it become more of the crime.
Go away now.
From this journey, we come back to the core aspect of morality. Who has the right to decide if the migrant is needy? So who really knows what lies in the hearts of the people and the intention of the migrant to make the right decision? Many people come to Europe because they see it as the land of milk and honey. They come looking for sexual liberation, looking for economic opportunities. And yes, of course, there are asylum seekers, but with such confusion, knowing the true intention, we cannot, it seems, as we can reveal, make the right decision. But is there indeed a unique personality who does know and can make that right decision? The question isn't who to let in or not to let in. But the question should be, who chooses to let in?